Hello everyone, I'm Adi. Welcome back to the Chess Climb. Um, this is going to be the Checkmate pattern series for the next couple of videos, and I think I put out a poll on YouTube asking for content ideas on what people want to see on the channel, and someone requested for me to do a video on Checkmate patterns. So I'll be doing two Checkmate pattern per video. So as you all know, I said I was studying the auto use superb series. So I've been lazy and I've done 3 chapters, and the first 2 chapters was on mating motives, and I had an in-depth knowledge on what on few mating patterns. So the first mating pattern I'll be talking today is the Anastasia's mate. It often involves the knight on I think most of the time you have the knight on e2. You have the knight on e2, you have the knight on e7 as well, restricting the king from accessing the g1, the g3, the g8, and the g6 square, while the rook or the queen gives a checkmate on the open file. So this is how we're going to be doing it. I'll show you one example, and I will go through one of these exercises I did on that specific mate in the book. So the first game we will be looking on was a game between Mikhail Kamishov and Alexei Sokolovsky, and you can give it a go from here. It is black to play in this position. You can pause the video and try to figure out the best move in this position. So the very first time I did this exercise, I think I was able to, yeah, I think I did a mistake. I couldn't find the mate. The first thing I did was I tried knight f3 check. After gf3, I tried queen takes g3, queen takes g4, and after hg4, rook g4 check. Then I saw that the king can go here. No, can he? Okay, so let me put it on the board. I tried knight f3 check here, and after here, and after queen takes g4, takes, and there's just nothing going on here. I did it for a couple minutes. I think I spent more than 30 minutes, but I couldn't figure it out. And oops, I mistakenly showed the best move in that position. So when I went through the book, the best move in this position is knight e2. Well, that's the best move. You can go ahead and figure out why this is the best move in this position. So knight e2 check. Obviously the queen can't take because we will just be up a queen for our knight, so there's no point in the queen taking. So now the king has successfully stepped into into h1, and I think here already I don't know if I briefly calculated. I think there's no point if the king come here, because after, let's say, if check, yeah, there's just I think there's rook h5 check. After gh5, there's just rook h4 checkmate. So that's why king h2, I think, doesn't do any difference as well. So white in this position, can fight a little bit longer by playing king h1. So you can pause the video here and find the best move. Black to play and win what is the best move in this position. So as you all know, the Anastasia's mate is about the rook on e2, sometimes on e7, restricting these squares, taking these squares away from the king. And I'm sure you already know the best move in this position. You sacrifice the queen. Oh no, my queen. So black has decided to, Sokolovsky decided to sacrifice his queen on g4, and after hg4, I think this was played in Leonidas or Leningrad 1938 or 1936, something like that. So here already, the best move in this position, just like why king h2 doesn't work, you sack the rook. In this position, you sack the rook, which is rook h5 check, king takes no pawn takes h5 is forced because the king doesn't have access to the g1 square, and after that there's just rook h4 checkmate. So that's what the Anastasia's mate is all about. Is about the knight on e2, sometimes on e7, just taking away these squares away from the king. So we're going to do 2 exercises. This is how it's done in this book. I think this exercise is 1 point. I think the second one is 2 points or something like that. So you can pause the video here on, and I think it's 1 sec. Yeah, so white to move in this position and win. So white to move in this position and win. If you get it outrightly, it's 1 point. If you don't, it's 0 points. So you can go ahead and pause the video and figure out the best move. Just like I said, Anastasia's mate is about. So the best move in this position is knight e7 check, forcing the king to go to h8, and after king h8, another brilliant sack on the way. Queen takes h7, king takes h7 is forced, and after rook h1 checkmate, because the knight is on e7, taking away the g6 square away from black king. So let's go through the mate. So it's knight e7 check, king h8, and you know what, you sack the queen, and after king takes queen, there's just rook h1 checkmate. So this square is taken away from the king. This square is taken away from the king by the knight. That's why the knight is important as well in the Anastasia's mate, and the rook giving a check on the open file, and this is why and this is the combination about Anastasia's mate. So black to play and win. There's no bishop on d1. The bishop is on c1. So black to play and win in this position. So the best move by far is to play knight g3 again, and if queen takes h7, there's knight e2 checkmate. So this is why knight g3 was pretty strong in this position. So the best move by far in this position, just to go over it. So the bishop on, if the bishop was on d1, so knight g3 wouldn't be possible because we won't have knight e2 checkmate. So let me do that once again. The best move by far here is knight g3 check, and so it's knight g3 threatening the queen. So obviously, oh no, my queen, the queen on h7 is poisoned because of knight e2 checkmate. So white can decide to fight a little bit longer by taking on d4, and here we already see why it's I'm very sure you already figure out the best move in this position. Knight knight e1 check. So king h1 is forced. So if you find knight g3 here in this correct position, you have 1 point. So you can go ahead and pause the video here again to figure out the best move. Don't forget that we are down a rook and a bishop, so it's up to us to figure out the best move. We can immediately be back in the game by taking the queen on d4. So if you play queen d4 here, you get 1 point, so you get 2 points out of 3. But instead of taking the queen on d4, there's something even better. You sack the queen on h2. So if you play queen takes h2, you get the full 2 points, so you get overall 3 points, and with the first one you get 4 points in total if you're able to solve the 2 exercises. And the reason why this is better is why have an extra queen, why take the queen when you can give checkmate? So if king takes, obviously rook h8 is the best move by far. The queen can decide to come here, but to prolong the mate, you can decide to do something like this. Queen h6 for white, just trying to fight, keep on fighting. And don't forget, the queen is still hanging. You can decide to take the queen anytime you want now, but you take the bishop check, and the only move here by far is to put the queen on h4, and after that Rook takes h4 is checkmate, and as you can see again, the same pattern on course. The knight on e2 is restricting the king from going back to g1, from stepping to g3, and the rook on this file is giving checkmate. So this is what the Anastasia's mate is all about. So if you're able to solve the two exercises, you get 4 points. Drop a comment down below, and if you get the full points, just drop a comment below, and if you only get 3 points, drop a comment below. So I'll be moving on to the next checkmate, which is one sec. Yeah. So welcome back. The next checkmate we'll be talking about is the Arabian Mate, and obviously almost every intermediate player knows about this. And when I was solving this, it gives me a lot of energy to find the best move by far in this position. So once again, we're going to do one example, and I'll be doing 2 exercises, and you can test your knowledge. So apparently the Arabian Mate involves the knight as well and the rook most of the times. In this position, the rook gives the checkmate while the knight defends the rook. So most of the time it often occurs at the back rank where the king can't step up, or the other squares available for the king to step to will be defended by the knight. So in this kind of position, if we were to give an Arabian checkmate, the king won't be able to go to g1, go to h2, and sometimes they won't be able to step to g3. Why? The knight will be on f3, and the rook will be given the checkmate on on g1, something like that. That's how the Arabian Mate occurs. So in this position, if you haven't figured out the best move, you can take your time to drop to figure out the best move. So by far, rook, if you tried knight g1, I'm sorry, this doesn't work because white gets checkmate on the board before us. So in this position, after rook a8 check, you can play rook d8, prolonging the mate. After rook takes d8, you already know that this should be winning. If king h7, there's knight g5 check, and after king h6, there's just, oh no, yeah, so after king h6, there's knight takes f7 check. The only move is king h5, and after king h5, there's just rook h8 checkmate. So if you've tried knight takes g1, it is a mistake. If that's what you tried, knight takes g1 is a mistake. And obviously rook f2 doesn't work because the king just takes check, the king goes back to h1, and there's no way for black to get to the king. So that's why if you try knight takes g1 is a mistake. If you try knight g1 is a mistake in this position. If you try rook takes g2, it is obviously a mistake. So the best move in this position is to do what a popular chess YouTuber once said: you sack the rook. One more time, you sack the rook. I think finding in this position as an intermediate player, I think finding rook takes f3 wouldn't be spectacular if you are not able to calculate the following move. So I think rook f3, the only reason why you wouldn't want to consider rook f3 is if you haven't seen the second move from black, you would never consider sacrificing the rook in this position. So rook takes f3 is a very brilliant move, because after gf3, once again, you can pause the video and figure out the best move by far in this position. The knight can take the rook with check, and after king takes, we'll be up, or we'll be down a pawn, and maybe will be in time to save it, or try to just give perpetual check. But I think the king can sort of like zigzag his way into this position, and that will be it. So I think after, let's say, this check, king here, king here, king here, if king here, if we go here, check, maybe here, and they start pushing, I don't know, maybe start doing something like this. If take now, maybe after this, trapped already, there's no way for us to move away. I think the rook is going to be trapped, maybe not trapped, but I just don't see a way for us, for white to further develop in this position. So that's why I think knight taking on, so that's why I think knight taking on g1 is a mistake. So if you haven't paused the video, I think you should and figure out the best move in this position. And the knight can go to f4 and d4. So the knight can go to one second, how do I do this? Yeah. So the knight can go to f4 or d4 in this position. And if you tried knight f4, I think if you tried knight f4, I'm sorry, that is the best move. I'm kidding, it's not the best move in this position. So after knight f4, let's say king h1, one more time, the king, there's no way for the rook to get to the king. There's no way for the rook to get to the king. You can try this, and after rook g2, if we move our rook, this is just completely winning. The knight is going to be lost, white is going to double up, and checkmate will be looming, because apparently this knight is getting close to being trapped already. So that would have been checkmate inevitable. So knight f4 is a mistake in that position. The best move is to play knight d4 check, and in the spirit of the Arabian Mate, you already know where the knight is going. If apparently the only position is to rook g2 or king h1, so we'll try king h1. And the reason why king h1 is good in this position, the only reason why knight d4 is good in this position is that the knight has access to f3 now. And after f3, no matter what happens, if check, king h7, there will always be, let's say, comes back, we're going to take. And if something like this, we're going to take. And after b4, there will be checkmate. And that is why we need the knight on f3. And whatever white does after knight f3 is going to be checkmate regardless of whatever happens. They can try g2. We're going to do this check, and when the kings move, we even have something like this check, king g, rook g1, and this is checkmate. One more time, you see why we want the knight on f3, because it takes away the h2 square away from the king, while the rook is giving the checkmate on g1, and apparently protecting the rook and giving checkmate. So we'll do two example exercises. Excuse me, and I forgot to mention that was a brilliant game by the author of the book itself, the Auto Use Support series. That was a beautiful Arabian Mate by himself in the Bundesliga game 1999. So the first exercise we're going to be looking at is I think it's 1 point. So white to play and win. In this position already, I think we are down a pawn. So white to play and win. You can go ahead and pause the video to figure out the win in this position. Drum roll. You sack something here to get an Arabian checkmate. So I'm pretty sure someone familiar with pattern recognition, I was able to get this the very first time I did this, so I had no issue solving this. So the best move in this position is to sack the queen. So you go queen takes f8 check. The king has to take. That is the only move. So king takes f8 is forced, and you know what? There's rook e8 check. King g7 only move, and you already figure out why the knight on f6 is doing a very good job, because it allows rook g8 checkmate. The pawn on g3 is taking away this square away from the king. The rook on g1 g8 is given the checkmate, and that is it. So if you're able to figure out queen takes f8, you get 1 point. So we'll be moving to the next exercise in the Arabian Mate. We're already down 2 pawns. Are we? Yeah, we're already down 2 pawns. No, we're already down a rook for our extra knight, so there's already material imbalance. If you're able to get this correctly, you get I think you get a maximum of 2 points for this game. So go ahead and pause the video and figure out the best move white to play and win. Yes, I was able to solve this as well correctly, and the best move in this position is to play knight g6 check for obvious reason. Knight g6 check, and after hg6 you can see the reason why the knight on f6 is doing a fantastic job. I'm sure you guessed it right. There's rook h1 check, and king g7 is false. You see the reason. The knight on f6 is taking away the g8 and h7 square away from the king, and after g7, king g7, there's mate in 1 in this position. There's rook h7 checkmate. So apparently this is the Arabian Mate, but there's a more stubborn way for black to be in the game. So I think that's what was giving me a concern, because I immediately saw the checkmate. But after hg6, after here, yeah, so white can decide to play king g7. I think king g7 was what gave me an issue. So here already you can take on f7, king takes f7, and after knight h7 check, maybe king move knight f6, and we are up a pawn, and this should be a pretty convincing win. We're going to take this pawn, the rook is going to come here, so that will be like, that should be a very easy win for. So if you're able to spot that correctly, if you're able to see rook h1 after that, you get the maximum of 2 points, so that will be 3 points in total. So for the total of this video, you should be able to get a maximum of 7 points. So drop a comment below on your total points. If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and you should look out for the next one. Bye.